Welcome to Astro Lunatic's Guide to the Universe. I'm trying something different. I'm going live directly on YouTube. I've never tried that. Usually, I am recording it while I stream it on the Twitter. However, um, I'm trying to screen share right now. So I'm not really sure. Because when I'm looking at my picture here, I see my huh, okay, not sure what's going on with that. Let me close a bunch of crap and see if that works. No, I can't minimize that. All right, well, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Um, just want to pop on quick. I did a show yesterday talking about what's coming up with the astrology for the next few days. So it was yesterday, Thursday through the weekend. And my screen is not sharing the way I want it to. Hmm. I'm sharing a window. Yes, I am. But I don't like the window that I'm sharing. So scratch that for now. Um, sorry then you get you gets no chart unless I could figure out a different way. So I talked a little bit about the astrology for today with the moon in Sagittarius and how it would oppose Jupiter and conjunct a few asteroids that I want to talk about today. One of them being an asteroid named called LIE. So, if you're not aware, asteroids do have numbers and they have names. Not all of them have names. Sometimes they're named after the people that discover them, but sometimes they're just named after something that I guess is important to the discoverer. I don't know the backstory as far as there, that's better, my share screen. I don't know the backstory of how this asteroid got named, but its name is Lie. So today the moon is conjunct asteroid Lie. It's also conjunct an asteroid called Astraea. Astraea has to do with justice. She's the lovely gal that you see pictured with scales in her hands, who represents justice when we think about it and the courts and how justice is supposed to be blind, but it shouldn't be deaf and dumb, right? Justice is blind, but it's not deaf and dumb. Anyway, the implication is that it should be impartial and not look more towards one party or the other. However, I think it is interesting and we should look at what's going on. So, yes, it has to do with justice. It has to do with weighing information and what's true, what's not true to sort out what is a lie. So, this is the moon and lie and Astraea in the sign of Sagittarius. So, what is Sagittarius known for? Well, it is ruled by the planet Jupiter. And interesting, Jupiter is in Gemini in the opposite sign. A Gemini is about a whole lot of information or basic information. And Sagittarius is more or less the belief structures and the philosophy that we form based on the information that we take in. Uh, Gemini is, let's say, um, elementary education, whereas Sagittarius is college level, university. So we have that sort of um, polarity. Uh, and then we're also getting into the Sagittarian themes of, gaining a higher perspective. And we are talking about laws and the courts. And, well, here we have Estrella, which calls our attention to law, courts, cases, and Jupiter, which went direct a couple weeks ago, which is still very strong because it moves very slowly. It's still at the degree that it went direct at. So it's still quite impactful. And what did we see once Jupiter went direct? We saw interesting lawsuits filing, uh, lawsuits being dropped, tons of lawsuits. I mean, there's been tons of lawsuits since Jupiter entered Gemini. And I told you guys, if you've been following along, told you way back, Jupiter and Gemini is going to bring a lot of lawsuits, but it also brought a lot of frivolous lawsuits, a lot of lawsuits that are going to go nowhere. But when it comes to this whole idea of, let's say, what's going on in Sagittarius, which is the courts and the law of the land, a lot of public opinion is shaped by what they hear in the media. Media is another thing, publishing is another thing that Sagittarius is is associated with, considered a sign that rules that area of life. Let's say so much going on in the media, and I think what we have been trying to learn as a human collective. Some people get it, but it's again for the people in the back who don't see it yet. It's the spin machine of the media and PR and all that that is being exposed to us. We're learning about it, by the lawsuits that are uh, in the public eye because it involves people in the public eye, like Diddy, um, Blake Lively. We've learned a lot about the PR machine and um, agents of the machine, and also how the media has become agents of the machine, right? The whole Doge exposure of how the media gets paid to say certain things. Like, we always knew that this was for a long time, we knew that this was going on, we just didn't know the mechanizations behind it. But I'm feeling like we've entered Pisces season, Mercury's almost halfway through Pisces, Saturn is in Pisces, and it's calling for accountability, and Sagittarius is a square to Pisces. So whatever's going through Sagittarius at the time, at this point, it's just the moon. But the moon picks up on Lie, the asteroid, Lie and Astraea. And so something having to do with justice, a lie, a legal case, evidence, and someone is lying. And Jupiter in the opposite sign of Gemini is people talking out of both sides of their mouth, and it's something that was probably said already in the past and someone is just catching it now, quite possibly. So, eh, playing out in the media or the public sector or in your life, possibly. Who knows? But if you have planets in Sagittarius in the middle of, I'd say the middle degrees, and Gemini, or in Pisces, or in Virgo, uh, then you might be in- closer to this, or more affected, more closely affected, or it catches your eye. So it comes across your desk in some way because you have planets there. Not to say that the sextiles and the trines to these signs, and again, these are the mutable signs that I just listed. Um, Not to say that other planets aspecting these degrees won't, but it may be pivotal or let's say force action because it's a square. Anyway, I think it's very interesting because there's a whole generation of people born in the 60s who have, let's say, Uranus and Pluto in Virgo, in the mid degrees of Virgo, or anyone for that matter who has Virgo planets. That's a whole generation, though. So I'm just thinking it interesting because this is a T square, right? Moon in Sagittarius with Lie in Astraea, opposite Jupiter in Gemini, being squared by Mercury in Pisces. That's a T square. But if you look to the opposite degree of Pisces, that's Virgo right there. So that loops Virgo in. Virgo is the one who should be looking at the details and keeping track. Um, but but maybe they are and they're hiding. They're hiding the ball. Who knows? But let's get back to the astrology. I'm not going to share a screen because I'm lazy today. So I'm going to talk about, I told you about the asteroids. I'm going to talk about the asteroids and we're going to talk about some stars. So, as far as the moon in Sagittarius and Lie and Astraea, I look to see what star is there, and there's a star called Saturn. Interesting, Jupiter was here in Sagittarius when the sarin gas attacks happened. That's pretty interesting. Um, Saturn is in the constellation that represents Hercules. Let me just find it. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, star, Saturn, Finn. So, what do we find that's interesting about Herc? Yeah, well, like I said, Jupiter was on the fixed star Saturn on March 20th, 1995. There was a sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway and that caused temporary vision problems. So let's just file it away. Gas attack and vision problems. Vision problems. It's interesting because where Jupiter is right now, the stars in the constellation of Orion talk uh, about Orion being blinded and then restoring his sight by gazing at the sun. So here in Sagittarius on this degree with the star, we could look at it, metaphorically speaking, as a lie that is meant to obscure the truth and blind people. Jupiter, and I talked in previous podcasts about Jupiter being in the constellation Orion and sun gazing, and how it made me think of that quote, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant," which you often hear lawyers and judges quote, and I had to trace it down. Turns out the guy was like, I don't even know, a socialist or something like that, but he was a Supreme Court judge. So, aside from whatever his political leanings were, he said this and it's still quoted today. So, it's the idea that exposing things to the light is the best way to cure. And of course, sun gazing I thought was really an interesting thing to look into for healing. I just think I've always been fascinated with it. A friend of mine had some anecdotal evidence about it possibly actually working, but let's go back to Hercules for a minute. So the stars in the constellation of Hercules, where the moon is right now, the moon is conjunct Saturn. Saturn is in the constellation Hercules. So Hercules, um, the Greek word for this constellation was angonasin. And I know I was talking about this when we were I was when Judge Engoron was in play and he was hearing one of Trump's cases. I'm just recalling that now. Engonasin, Engoron. Okay. So the mythology of Hercules, so Engonasin means kneeler, or Hercules might mean kneeler, but what it is a tightrope walker. So let me read from Constellation of Words about the constellation of Hercules. Engonasan will inspire him with enthusiasm for risky callings, with danger the price, for which he will sell his talents. Daring narrow steps on a path without thickness, he will plant firm feet on a horizontal tightrope. Then, as he attempts an upward route to heaven on a sloping tightrope, he will all but lose his footing, and suspended in midair, he will keep a multitude of suspense upon himself. So, the other thing that I think is important to point out with this constellation is that it is associated with those who, in terms of their career callings, are given tasks which are risky and put them in possible danger and get paid for it. So think about that in terms of how much people get paid to lie. This came up yesterday because there's this reporter, Megan Cuniff, and she was in the courtroom reporting on the ASAP Rocky trial, and she was talking shit on Twitter, or maybe it was Instagram, I don't know, I think it was Twitter, and I think she bet 50 cent that, ASAP was gonna be guilty. Anyway, like, she's reporting from the guilty side. Meanwhile, the average person can say, if they're watching the trial, clearly this was a setup, and it was extortion. But anyway, so she's paid opposition. So she she bets 50 cent and he came to collect $500,000. 500 grand she bet him that ASAP Rocky would be found guilty. And when he was found innocent, he comes back and he's like, "Pay up, bitch." Was very funny. But this is the idea of people who get paid to lie. People in the media, even, lawyers. Sometimes lawyers lie. Sometimes defense lawyers and prosecution can lie, and they're getting paid. So if it benefits their side, they will lie. So I think this is interesting right here. We can look at that and apply that as it fits. So the moon is square to Mercury in Pisces and square to Jupiter. Jupiter square Mercury is stretching the truth, being less than truthful. Um, Mercury definitely obscures and obfuscates in Pisces. Um, and it could be this idea of, hit them with so much information, you don't know what is the truth, and they'll hear what they want to hear and latch on to it. And that's how the public gets played. Um, but as far as Mercury goes, Mercury is conjunct two stars that back in the mid to late, around the middle of January, Saturn was there. Now, that was around the time of the inauguration, and the symbolism of V for Vendetta and Guy Fawkes came up. And I looked at the astrology and I saw where Saturn was, and I said, oh, well, Saturn was conjunct fixed star ANKAA in the Phoenix constellation. And this is all associated with Phoenix, Guy Fawkes, the gunpowder plot. And what happened? Shit started blowing up, right? Well, Mercury is there now. So there could be something that comes back around from mid January where there was a lie and now it gets exposed. That's possible. The other thing about 15 degrees of Pisces, the other star that's there is Ashernar, which is in the constellation Eridanus, which is the river. And every time I talk about this, I do mention the river is the flow of energy, it's the flow of currency, and rivers have banks. So keep that in mind. But Ashernar is associated with religion, church officials, and when let's say if it was Jupiter in Pisces on Ashernar, it would let's say it would show, um, it would be representative of something very fortunate, someone aligned with their values and their principles spiritually. It would be an example of what it should be, right? And it would give high office and honors in terms of religion and the church. However, we have a square from Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's at 11, but Jupiter's moving forward. So, over the next few months, it's going to square that position. And within the next 10 days, 2 weeks, the sun will be at 15. degrees of Pisces, conjunct Ashernar, the star, and it will square Jupiter. So, what is coming is definitely a reckoning when it comes to because Jupiter is squaring that position, uh, that means that it's difficult. I would think possibly more attention is being paid to uh, things having to do with religion and people high up in positions of authority, church officials, um, because there will be lawsuits, and that's what brings attention through the media. And if you really want to know what's going on with things, look at what's filed in the courts. Look at how many people do it. Follow someone on YouTube or on Twitter who is reporting on what is being filed and what is the substance of these lawsuits and filings and statements and affidavits, because that's the truth and that's what matters. That's what is going to cut the mustard, let's say. Because, I mean, if you haven't noticed, the media tends to spin things the way it wants, and they're paid to do so. People are paid to write articles. Not everybody, not real investigative journalists, but media outlets are definitely paid um, a certain narrative. So when you consume information through the media, consider the source. Consider the source. So if someone is paid, they may be biased. Sometimes it's normal to pay people. I mean, look at the case of Karen Reed and the hearing that happened the other day, and the judge abruptly stops it under the it appears on the surface that she stopped it because she thinks that maybe some of the expert witnesses in the first trial were paid. And so, it was represented to her that they weren't being paid. They weren't hired. They were hired by the government. They were hired by the FBI. And then the FBI or the DOJ or whoever, um, a higher authority said, we cannot in good conscience hold on to this because their investigation was not into the Karen Reed case. So, long story short, the argument appears on the surface to be who got paid and does that make them biased? So, paying people, people benefits, who benefits? Is there a lie? What is the truth? So Jupiter squaring to Mercury is challenging that, and Saturn was there in uh mid January. So we were kind of dealing with whatever this is. So for you personally, it could come up. Stuff might come up, back up from January, or it's a similar theme but different players. That's a possibility too. So let's see. Now, I do think that the accidents having to do with travel, especially air travel, will continue. I saw an astrologer that I follow. I thought she was interesting because she does pop culture. But she tweeted out Saturn in Pisces equals, airplane accidents. And I have to disagree with that. I mean, that may be true, but what I see is actually causing the accidents is planets in the constellation Eridanus because it's known for that. So Jupiter is continuing to move forward in Gemini, and when it gets to 15, it's going to square what I said was that 15 degrees in Pisces, where Mercury is now and Saturn was in January. And that's when we really started seeing a lot of these air travel accidents. So I'm just letting you know that I think that that is going to continue because Jupiter will be there. And at 15 degrees of Gemini, we have a fixed star, Cursa, which is in the constellation Eridanus. Now, this does represent themes of science, travel, authority, but also danger of accidents, especially at sea and drowning. So, in the water, there was a plane that crashed in the water, but not just the water, but especially the sea and drowning. Eridanus is known for that, drowning, literal and figurative. And so that's why I think we're seeing those accidents. It's not just Saturn in Pisces. I mean, that could be, but I just wouldn't take just Saturn in Pisces just on its own. Uh, I mean, Jupiter stationing to go direct. Jupiter is flight and air travel. And that caused a lot of accidents. We saw accidents then. Just before that, Uranus, which is also air travel too, stationed to go direct at 23 degrees of Taurus. And Uranus is on one of the fixed stars in the constellation Eridanus. So, and that one was more of like a technology sort of communications snafu. But the stationing of Uranus and the stationing of Jupiter and Saturn in mid Pisces all linked to the constellation Eridanus. So that is that's me correcting the record. Anyway, so let's see. What else do we have going on? So the moon again in Sagittarius, moving as the day progresses, once the moon gets to 18 to 19 degrees of Sagittarius, I talked about this in my um, weekend update, astrology update for the rest of the week, where the moon will conjunct asteroid Photographica. And as it does, it will square Saturn in Pisces at 19 degrees. And Saturn is conjunct asteroid Nessus at 18 degrees of Pisces. So I thought, well, this could be a photographica, photograph of something having to do with abuse, could be physical, could be murder, it could be something related to a long-standing family feud or blood feud or revenge. That's what Nessus is known for. It's not just abuse. But Nessus, the story, in mythology, Nessus was a centaur and he raped Deianira. I should look where Deianira is, but that's sort of a victim perpetrator theme with Nessus and Deianira when we use those as when we use those asteroids in astrology. So there's also an expression, the shirt of Nessus, or Nessus shirt. So Nessus was killed by Hercules. Interesting. The moon has been passing through is passing through the constellation of Hercules today. So Nessus was a centaur. He was killed by Hercules by okay, so Nessus was wounded. There was blood on his cloak. And then Hercules was killed by the blood-soaked tunic and consumed in fire. All right, so I'm reading this from the dictionary. Let's see. A centaur who was killed by Hercules, but whose blood soaked Hercules's tunic and consumed him by fire. Well, it was revenge. He was dying. His blood was poison because he was struck by a poison arrow. But he told crap. Who did he tell? Like I'm trying to now I can't remember the whole story of the mythology. But basically, in order to get revenge on Hercules, um, this is terrible now. I have to look this up. But it's kind of this um it's the idea that even though it's gonna fuck you up by fucking up your enemy, you're gonna do it anyway because you just hate them so much. I'm looking for I'm just looking for the oh, there's lots of pictures of it. Okay. Mythology. Okay, so Decanira was the wife of Heracles. I thought it was Decanira, but I wasn't sure. So Nessus rapes Deianira, the wife of Heracles or Hercules. Um, and then he ends up getting wounded, but he tells Deianira, if you want your husband to be faithful to you, because of course Heracles was cheating, here, give him my shirt, my tunic, knowing that it would, his blood was poison. So anyway, that's Nessus and Deianira. So it has a lot to do with revenge and what's the photographica? The moon isn't going to be at that degree for several hours. So I'm going to guess that something happens overnight and we find out about it in the morning. And I would just watch for photographic evidence, a photograph leaked, photograph in the headlines. Or if you see something and it's evidence of something, make sure you screenshot it. Wow. All right. So that's kind of all I think I wanted to say about this today. I wanted to just talked about it a little bit the other day, but I wanted to go deeper into it to really point out that there is something that is happening today that links back to January because of the positioning of where Mercury is. That's the degree where Saturn was mid January. And What happened after all of that? It seemed, I know people were speculating. However, it did seem awfully suspicious and coinkadinkle that all of a sudden accidents happen, things are blowing up, right? Um, and who could deny Melania's outfit? Like, that was just, that was hot. It was fire, right? And Anka, let's talk about Anka. Let's talk about Anka. So Mercury tomorrow will be conjunct asteroid Osiris. So could we say that something is being resurrected? Osiris does have to do with things being resurrected. I heard something. I heard something pass by me about, it's a conspiracy theory. It's not that it's right or wrong or true or false. It's the idea that people are talking about it. And this is what I take note of. What is surfacing in the collective consciousness? And they were implying that the elites can bring people back from the dead. How funny is that? We've got Mercury. Osiris is at 15 degrees of Pisces. Mercury will hit there tomorrow. The moon is squaring it today. There's a lie there, of course. Maybe that's the point. Maybe they want us to think that, but it's a lie. All right, but whatever. Whether it's literal or metaphorical, we're talking about resurrection. We're talking about the mystery schools and anything relating to Egyptian mythology. Where is Isis? I'm not going to look for her now. But okay, but Mercury and Osiris are at 15 degrees of Pisces. So now we have to talk about asteroid, and I'm sorry, fixed star ANKAA. Let's talk more about ANKAA because ANKAA is in the constellation of Phoenix, the bird that self-immolates and rises from the ashes. 15 degrees is Ashanara, yes, that's in Eridanus. We talked about that. However, the Phoenix. I think it's interesting how all right, so maybe this interests very few people except for me. However, I thought it was interesting that Tony Busby, the lawyer going after Diddy that filed a civil suit with a Jane Doe, he dropped it. And I thought, that's odd. It drops it with prejudice, which means he can't refile. I don't know. And then new lawsuits were filed. So it was a lawsuit against Diddy and Jay-Z. So is this something where you blow up your bridge, but you blow up your bridge, but you build something better, right? That's sort of like a phoenix type of a phoenix kind of a vibe. So let's talk about Anka and Phoenix. I Of course, another thing that probably interests very few people except for me, maybe some of the people that listen to my podcast here. But in the Karen Reed trial, the experts that uh, the prosecution is trying to exclude are The acronym for it is ARCA, ARCC, ARCCA, ARCA or AA. And this is ANKAA with 2 A's. I don't know. I just thought it's interesting. Maybe it's nothing, but I don't think so. Okay, so the Arabic spelling for ANKAA is Al-Ankah, Qa, the phoenix, also called Nair al-Zarak, meaning the bright one in the boat. And then it goes on to talk about the other stars in Phoenix that don't have names. They're like alpha, beta, gamma, whatever. And it looks like a boat. Um, and the Arabs knew it as al-Zarak. Al-Zarak. You'll notice oftentimes that there are correlations to other things when you look at these old names. This is why the etymology is so important and very interesting. If you go to the website Constellation of Words, it's fantastic. It talks all about the ancient astrology and the names that the Arabs had or the Chinese had for certain stars. It really does give us a lot of information. However, anyway, back to Anka. The word phoenix was said to come from Phoenicia. The Phoenicians were a seafaring people. The boat would be an appropriate association. And then it goes on to say, talks about the legend of the phoenix in China, Egypt, India, and Persia. The phoenix, the bird, has been an astronomical symbol of cyclic period. So when you see references to phoenixes, or in this case, Guy Fawkes, because Fawkes, the etymology is linked to the word phoenix. That's that's well, I guess it'll explain that later. Maybe we'll go into that a little bit more. So, cyclical period, some versions of the well-known fable making its life coincide with the great year of the ancients. So it's signaling a time period which is astronomical and it is cyclical. So, um, oh, okay, with the Egyptians who knew this bird as Bennu, there's an asteroid named Bennu. Should look that one up too. I'm gonna write it down. Bennu. There was a in the 70s, if you remember, if you're that old, if you're old as dirt like me, there was a series called The Phoenix. The guy's name was Bennu. I think there's episodes on YouTube. Go check it out. Um, okay, so the Egyptians knew the bird as Bennu and showed it on their coins. It was an emblem of immortality. The idea is death and rebirth. It's also a theme in pagan as well as Christian times, blah, blah, blah. The etymology. A phoenix is a person or thing of unsurpassed excellence or beauty, a paragon, a supremely beautiful, rare, or unique person or thing, a successful completion of a process. Hmm. So then it goes into the etymology, Greek phoinos, meaning blood red, phonos, meaning murder, phonos for gonos. It goes into it. Gynine, phonos for gynine, to strike. A cognate with Latin defender. Defender comes from European root gwen, to strike, to kill. Ooh, Derivatives: bane, a cause of harm, ruin, or death; baneful gun. Defend, defense, fence; fend, offend, offense. What else is associated with the Greek word phoinos, for red or blood red? Because the phoenix is associated with fire and the sun. The Greek word for purple is phoino, which the bird was said to be purple. Greek phonos is murder. Phoenix is a date palm, where the phoenix is said to have built its nest. Porphyry, a crystal rock from Latin purple. So purple dye, Phoenicians, they're the ones that first ones to use this purple dye, which I think came from a snail or something like that. Ah, what else? What else? What else? Phoenix. The phoenix in mythology is said to live for 500 or 1,000 years. Builds its nest on a funeral pyre of spices, and when the sun reaches its apex, the heat of its rays ignites the nest, and the phoenix perishes in the flames. Okay, whatever. Another story. It lights the fire by striking a rock with its beak, fans the flames with its wings. 3 days later, resurrection. From its own ashes, a little worm crawls forth, which became the new phoenix. Now, here's where Guy Fawkes comes into play. The fox, Fawkes, in Guy Fawkes is said to be related to phoenix. And it is said that the naming of fox arises from the phoenix's tendency to burst into flames. About 400 years ago, Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up the English Houses of Parliament with gunpowder. Every year on the anniversary of the gunpowder plot, children burn an effigy of him on a bonfire. Could this also be relating to, being a fall guy, taking the fall and an effigy, burning something in place of something else? Okay, so fireworks, arson. Okay, we were seeing arson around that time. Arsonists often have a connection with this star, ANKAA. So, interesting. Let's see what comes of this. Again, tomorrow, Mercury is going to be conjunct ANKAA. If there was arson back in January or something, somebody blew something up, we could be hearing about it. We could be hearing about, uh, gun and ballistics investigations. Oh, the fire. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. The fires in Los Angeles, Palisades, and arsonists. That's what it was. That's the other thing that happened around that time. So maybe we'll hear something about that. But the lie is, oh, yeah, we're going to let them rebuild, right? The mayor and the governor. As far as I know, that shit is still hanging in the balance. So, anyway, more astrological influences of the constellation Phoenix include a pioneering disposition, ambition, and power, together with a long lasting life and lasting fame. This star has been activated at the invention of Braille new ways to see, new light, the invention of the electric incandescent lamp, the early bird satellite used to transmit television pictures across the Atlantic, new eras opening up of Japan and new governments. So, what was being signaled in mid January with Saturn at 15 degrees conjunct the Phoenix was a new era, new government, right? Somehow, Mercury at that spot, I think, is going to give us maybe more information, or there will be an understanding or a discussion about laws, the legal system, and the Constitution. I mean, this is the big discussion right now because many people, and if you look at what is being said in the media, how it's being reported. They don't like it. There are lawsuits being filed against the things that Trump is trying to change. So, um, go find yourself some really good constitutional attorneys that are on YouTube being interviewed or giving seminars. It's out there, or on Twitter. They're out there. Chrisanne Hall, she's a constitutional expert. But mm, it, if it comes back down to Jupiter and Gemini and education, it looks like we failed. It looks like, not we, but we as a people have failed to educate our children for I mean, decades, let's just say decades, of how our government works and how the laws should be applied. I know how they often are applied, but how they should be applied without bias and according to the Constitution. And I looked at what Trump is doing and I said, oh, I mean, that's what government is supposed to do. And people are outraged because, in my opinion, they don't know what it looks like when government is actually doing what it's supposed to do. When a president is actually exercising the power that is given him in the Constitution. Because we've been living under an illusion for a long time. The system has been hijacked for a long time. And so there will be a big fight and debate, and the war, the quote, civil war that's going on is really between two sides of the people who are involved in our government. I mean, the population falls on one side or the other, and the majority of the population is not on the side of the status quo. So, I don't know. I foresee more courtroom cameras and more live streaming, more interest. You know, is C SPAN still on TV? Like, if you watch TV, go check out C SPAN, see what's going on there. I actually see this becoming more important to people, and they're going to be looking for where can we find the real news? Where's the real news? And it won't be MSNBC unless they decide to, get with the program, pun intended. Um, but it will be found in the courtroom. And I think, as we've seen, like, there's been over the past year and a half, 2 years, there's been very high profile cases that are quite entertaining. I don't know if you caught any of the ASAP Rocky stuff, but, you know, I think people are over the whole, like, not over, but I think people wanna see real reality TV, and that's real reality TV. Even reality TV is scripted. but courtrooms don't get any better than that. It's pretty juicy, but I guess you have to have patience and intelligence to wanna sit there and listen because it can be boring. But you should have the opportunity. I think federal trials, they're not televised. I mean, they could be. They generally aren't. But maybe they will be in the future because people wanna know. Uh, maybe there'll be more of a demand for it. So, I'm thinking that's where that's where the waves are headed. That's where the tide is going, in my opinion. So, yeah, Moon square Mercury, Moon square Mercury. There's a whole lot of emotions wrapped up in people's ideologies, philosophies, even religion. And there is a religious fervor to some people's political ideals. And, if we just take it straight Mercury and Pisces, it's very subjective. It's very emotional. It's very subjective, the way people are looking at things. And in that particular, under those particular conditions, you are um, susceptible to believing lies. You're going to be lied to if you show yourself as being heavily influenced in that regard. So it's time for discernment, and Mercury is moving towards Saturn. Saturn's at 19, Mercury's at 13, going towards 14. And by the 26th, that's when we have, no, it's the 25th, sorry. On the 25th, Mercury is conjunct Saturn. That's very sobering. That's a no, or that's a, make a commitment, speak with integrity, call out the lies. There's no more of this, oh, I misspoke. Mm, I don't know. I think it was intentional, allegedly. Hank Brennan, Hanky Spanky Panky. Uh, yeah, I won't bore you with my true crime Karen Reed obsession, but you can learn a lot. Pay attention to the legal proceedings. So, Mercury, Saturn. Mercury being the mind and the communications, Saturn being delays. There's a potential for that. Um, and again, it's a passing thing, but it's a sobering thought. It is having to face the music. It is coming up against an obstacle and a boundary. Yeah, and a delay. That could be. The moon is in Aquarius, winding down to the new moon in Pisces, which will be on the 27th. That'll be interesting. So let's see what happens. Mercury meets Saturn. Saturn says, do your job, which is to communicate and bring information. Remember, Mercury is Hermes. Hermes is the messenger between the the celestial realm where the gods dwell and earth and mortals. He's also considered to be a psychopomp, one of those figures in mythology that moves from the world of the living and the dead, also the conscious and the unconscious in Pisces. And things are coming up from the subconscious. The bodies are rising to the surface. The sea is giving up its dead. I wonder if we'll see any shipwrecks or something like that discovered and oh, bodies coming up. Yikes. Um, but Hermes is bringing messages. So Hermes meets with Saturn. Saturn's the boss. Saturn says yes or no. And then Mercury moves towards Neptune and goes to talk to Neptune, which is in charge of the sea and the deep unconscious. So, reality check, you can go back into your slumber and your unconscious state and go get drunk and high or whatever with Mercury moving, coming at Neptune. And if somebody can't handle the message that Saturn gives, I'm going to say this is where you're going to see people go off the deep end, off the bridge. Phoenix is burning bridges. Sagittarius represents high places and bridges. Just saying. All right, now here I am freestyling and stream of consciousness. I saw Iris. Iris is the rainbow bridge. Iris, where's Iris? Iris is conjunct Venus at 9 degrees of Aries. Iris is arco iris, rainbow, again associated with bridges. What else are we seeing here? Hmm. All right. I'm going to look at the stars in the last degrees of Pisces. I don't intend to go this long, but now I'm seeing some things. So Mercury will be on the 26th. Mercury will be conjunct Markab, which is in Pegasus, Saddlebari in Pegasus. That's 23 and 24 degrees of Pisces. And Matar, which means to kill. Just saying. Also in Pisces, matar, it means to kill in Spanish. Ay. Um, so, okay, so Pegasus is the winged horse that was born of the blood of Algol when Perseus cut off her head. And the constellation is associated with ambition, vanity, intuition, enthusiasm, caprice, and bad judgment. Okay. The constellation portends events concerning ships and the ocean and also changes in the weather. So, yeah, literal weather, but change in the weather means the winds are shifting and the rats are abandoning the ship because the ship is going down. Um, in medieval times, it was said to indicate vain individuals with a great deal of ambition but very poor judgment. So, Pegasus syndrome, the expression Pegasus syndrome, is referencing the mythology of Perseus and Bellerophon and the Pegasus. Um, and Pegasus is the child of Medusa and Neptune, symbolizing wisdom and emotion. So it's a dichotomy in terms of the nature of Pegasus and these degrees. This is what I'm speaking of. Mercury's going through these degrees, and this is what we're going to see. So, so Pegasus syndrome is like, on the one hand, people who seem to be able to fly over any situation unscathed. They never get touched, right? You know what I'm talking about. You know these people. However, there is the flip side of it, which brings a person down and, quote, being taken down a peg, Pegasus. And it refers to lessons in humility. So I expect some disgrace, some scandal, some shame, because something is exposed. Remember, we were talking about the moon conjunct photographica, square to Saturn, and then Mercury conjunct Saturn after that. But tomorrow, let's say, the moon will be in Sagittarius in the late degrees, which is also the Scorpion stinger. These are very vindictive degrees. So it could be somebody, there could be blackmail, extortion. I have photographs and I'll release them. Yeah. Uh, and then there's a clapback. There's revenge. Yeah. Oh, you're going to leak that about me? Well, I'm going to leak this about you. And then on the 22nd, tomorrow, let's see, the moon is at around 25, 26, 27 degrees of Sagittarius. What do we have there? Nothing interesting. But then when the moon goes into Capricorn later in the day or overnight, it does hit hubris. I did talk about that on my show the other day. But let's see these stars in the last 5 degrees or so of Sagittarius are in the constellation Scorpius. And these are so vindictive, so poisonous. We've got Shaula we've got Lasath, we've got Shaula. Those are in the stinger of the Scorpion, I think. Lasath, Shaula, Acumen, Aculeus, those are all around. That's all around the Scorpion stinger. Now, Antares, I did not mention though, because it's already passed, but Antares is about 10 degrees of Sagittarius, and that's the heart of the Scorpion. So there is an attempt with the moon opposite Jupiter, the moon being on Antares, to hit at the heart of the Scorpion, right? And then after that comes the tip of the tail because the Scorpion knows that it's going to die anyway. So it's going to come and sting you and take you with it. That's what we have coming tomorrow. Hold on to your hats. Okay, so Edaman, Aculeus. Aculeus is, yeah, that's part of this. Scorpion, Stinger again. Oh, these are such evil stars. Someone once posted, another astrologer on Twitter, that oh, the upcoming this or that transit to blah blah blah, it's going to be in these degrees. Talking about these degrees and claiming it as a good thing. And I thought, anytime I've seen stuff in this degrees and it's squaring to Neptune in Pisces, I have seen the shittiest stuff. I've seen like really down low and dirty. And so I mentioned that. I mentioned it in the replies. I'm like, yeah, this is really known for a lot of like I mean, these degrees were being affected when Kate Middleton disappeared last year and we all thought she was dead, right? Because there was some shit going down. And what was it? It was the ugliest stuff in the press about her. I mean, this is war. Like, this is takedown shit here. So, Aculeus in Scorpio uh, is at 25 Sagittarius. I know that's going to be confusing for some people, but deal with it. I don't have time to to explain it. So, the stinger, the place where one bows down. Ooh, Scorpio is the ruler of the organs of elimination, including the anal region. Just saying, the place where one bows down and takes it up the woohoo. Ugh. Yeah, okay. Scorpion, the heel of Achilles. Yeah, this is crap. It can affect eyesight, cause blindness. Beep, beep, beep. Yeah, expect the unexpected. It's definitely war. Sinistra, Acumen, Edaman. Sinistra is at 29. That is Ophiuchus, which also deals with poisons, but it's more in the sense of healing and regeneration. Because Ophiuchus wrestles serpents. It's all about managing the serpent. Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer. Anyway, it has to deal with poisons, but it has to do with detoxification, healing, homeopathy. Sinistra refers to the left side. That's interesting. In Kabbalism, Ophiuchus is the 16th tarot trump, the lightning struck tower. Very interesting. And this particular star gives an immoral, mean, and slovenly nature associated with depravity. With the moon here, lustful, wanton, infamous, scandalous, addicted to sorcery and poisoning. How you like that? This is crazy. Anyway, it's- it is what it is. But there could be overdoses. There could be people being suicided, Epsteined. Has anyone checked on Diddy lately? We need to do his chart. Oh my God. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. Hmm. All right. Now I have a new mission. So, hope that all makes sense to everyone. Please, if you have questions, ask. Put them in the comments. Send me a DM. Send me an email. If you want a reading, astrolunatic@gmail.com. I encourage discussion, questions, observations, and let's make this a group effort. I want to know if other people are seeing the the correlations that I'm seeing. Maybe you're you're going through something and you see the theme or playing out, but it's a little different, right? That's where we have to use our right brain, creative. Um, you have to be able to look at things when you're looking at the astrology and the mythology, the archetypes, the asteroids. You got to look at it in terms of the archetypes, the themes, right? And how could that play out in another way? How is that playing out in your life, in someone else's life that you're observing? So it takes a little stretching of the mind, and literal minded people, littoral, which makes me think of littoral rights. Littoral rights, that's another thing that has to do with littoral riparian rights. Oh, now we're getting back to the river. Littoral. I gotta look that up. I'm gonna write that down right next to Bennu. But anyway, this is the way my mind works. And my mind is not literal. My mind is probably littoral. Um, I think riparian rights has to do with where's the property line if the river or a body of water is on the property line. I think the property line extends to the middle of said body of water. But now I have to look up littoral. Anyway, literal minds have a hard time with astrology and mythology because they can't quite stretch it to see how it applies and the themes. But, if you did well in English literature in school, like I did, you might enjoy it. You might enjoy it. And so you might enjoy the backstory of the uh, of the astrology, of the constellations, the history, the themes, the mythology, and where the names came from, the etymology. To me, it's all fascinating, but I might be in the minority. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for sharing my obsession. And that's it for now. I think we sucked the juice out of all that lemon. Okay, feedback. I welcome it. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow. Hit the bell to get notifications on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter X. You can hit a bell there too, and you'll get notified of when I go live. And this was exclusive for YouTube. Thought I'd show you guys a little love over here. But I'm recording it, so I'm going to put it up on Twitter, but you guys get it first. Well, two of you. There's probably one of you because I see two viewers, but I am one of them. So there's that. All right, I'm done here. Thank you again so much. Your support means so much to me because I could do this all day long by myself. But what good is it if you don't have somebody to share it with? So thank you for being here. I do appreciate. S- So again, ciao for now.